Hello, internet friends. I am in Portland. This is, I'm at the 2 mile marker. I'll show you that. The 2 mile marker on Leif Erikson Road, which winds through Forest Park. And if you look down, see, this is all reverse, isn't it? Look down there, you can see Northwest Industrial Portland. I haven't done a video for a long time, and I'm not going to go through my list of excuses, but I'm just going to say, hey, welcome back. Here I am. I got some good stuff going while I was here in Portland. A feature of it was that I met with Barry Brusseau, who's a longtime Portland area musician. He was in some great bands, most notably the Jimmies in Portland. That's where he was when I got to know him, and then I got to know him even better when he married my cousin, which is a different story. He now has a recording studio, and that's where I met him. We did a interview, and I asked him to sing a song for me, show me around the studio, all that kind of stuff. So my phone is almost full on the memory, so I'm not going to talk real long today, but I'm just going to say welcome back, and come here and listen and learn about Barry Brusseau. So you've had a long career in music. Take me way back, like when you were a teenager or a kid or whatever, and tell me how you got started and your first guitar and all that kind of stuff.
Actually, I think the first guitar I ever played on is sitting right there.
The Takamine?
Yeah. So that was my mom's guitar. My mom started taking guitar lessons probably, I'm going to say 1977, around that time. And if we back up a little bit, my whole love for music started with all my mom's 45s.
And what kind of singers or bands or whatever?
Well, she loved everything from the 50s and 60s, because that was her time to dance and be a teenager. So at some point, she gave me like 2 boxes of all her 45s from that time frame. And so that's what sparked my love for music. I mean, also, the family environment at the time was kind of falling apart a little bit. My father died when I was young. My mom remarried, and it's hard to warm up to a new dad. And especially a new dad who is kind of a hard drinking, hard fighting type of guy. And so I think I found some escape in all that music.
Was she like up through the Beatles and stuff?
Yeah.
Or
all that you would expect: Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, Elvis, obviously, all that stuff. And I think one of the first songs that I loved that I couldn't stop playing was Peggy Sue.
Oh yeah,
Buddy Holly's Peggy Sue. And so I also got, my mom gave me her little mono record player, where you would stack the records up, and they would drop and play and drop and play, which, that you'd frown on that nowadays. You can't stack records up. But, and so I remember, turning that up as far as it would go and pressing my ear to the speaker.
Wow.
And listening to Peggy Sue over and over again. I love that song. But instrument-wise, I fell in love with the saxophone. I wanted to play saxophone. I wanted to play 50s style rock and roll saxophone. So that's what I wanted to do in music. And so I went to learn how, or in school, when there's band, and at some point, 3rd grade maybe, you can start taking band. I don't know if they have band anymore, but
they do, but they don't start at 3rd grade usually. They start them too late. I think it's like 5th, 6th, 7th grade. They try to get kids interested.
And so you went. I remember kind of an evaluation. I don't remember what was at the school. I'm not exactly sure where that happened, but I remember them telling me that you should start with the clarinet because your hands are small. And then because it's the same fingering generally. And so if you learn the clarinet, it'll transfer to the saxophone. And so I started taking clarinet lessons. Mr. Story was my teacher, and started playing in band. And I was first chair. I loved it. I practiced and I was really into it. But I wasn't getting to the rock and roll as quick as I wanted. And when I say rock and roll, I mean like Bill Haley and the Comets, that kind of stuff. And or Boots Randolph. You know, I think he's got that crazy.
Yeah.
People laugh at that song now, but I loved that song when I was a kid.
Yeah, but what decade was this? Was this the 70s?
Yeah, it would have been the 70s, but that song would have been from the 50s.
Yeah, so you were really retro even as a little
right.
kid.
Yes. And so by the time I finally got to the saxophone, I was starting to listen to more of my own music. I remember my mom had a Don Kirshner's rock concert compilation album.
Yeah.
And I remember two songs that kind of changed my direction. One was Black Sabbath's Paranoid.
Oh, wow.
That was on there.
That's a big jump from Boots Randolph.
Yes. And the other was Magic Carpet Ride, Steppenwolf.
Okay.
And those kind of like became, they veered my course a bit. Uh-huh. And so Mom always liked to go thrift shopping. And so anytime I'd be at the Goodwill, I'd look at the albums. And then I'd grab like Black Sabbath, Masters of Reality. Oh, cool.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of started my own thing. So now I'm listening to Black Sabbath and their heavy riffs of Tony Iommi and playing Hawaii Five-0 on the saxophone.
Okay.
and it wasn't, quite doing it for me. And around this time, Mom's, I started gravitating to Mom's guitar and just kind of picking it up. And I didn't know how to play it, but just messing around with the strings. And I just, was like, this is what I want to do now. I want to play guitar. I quit practicing, and the teacher was frustrated with me. And so we kind of threw in the towel on the saxophone and I started taking guitar lessons. And that was kind of that was kind of the beginning of that shift.
Was your first teacher, were they willing to teach you Sabbath riffs and things like that?
Yes. My teacher looked like he walked right off of, or like walked right out of, who he looked like? Jerry Rafferty.
Oh, okay.
Remember Jerry Rafferty?
Yeah.
He looked like Jerry Rafferty.
And that had saxophone too, right?
It did, yes. And so and I always remember, whenever he would reach over to point to a fret, like you need to be here, I could smell weed on his face. Like he'd been smoking a joint before we, but really, perfect teacher. He was a great teacher.
Yeah.
And so, yes, one of the first songs I learned was, I can't remember it, but the second one was Hot Blooded. Foreigner's Hot Blooded.
Okay. So this must have been around
78.
78, okay.
Yeah, I think 78, 79 is when that album came out. I love that album.
Okay.
And so I learned how to play Hot Blooded and Double Vision.
Okay.
And but at first he taught me the basics.
Uh-huh.
And then I said, could you teach me some songs? He's like, yeah, bring me whatever. And I was like, I want to play Hot Blooded. And so Stormy was the first song I learned.
Who's that by? I recognize the title, but I can't think of it now.
It might be
I'm getting it mixed up with Windy, like the association.
Right, it does. It is from that kind of.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway,
So,
I don't know why that just popped back into my head. But
okay.
So, and then at some point, and I think this was valuable. He said, we're not going to waste time in learning the book anymore, these notes and all this. He's like, if you want to do that, that's fine. It's not necessarily where I excel as a teacher. He's like, I'm going to teach you some scales and you're going to come in and we'll learn some of these songs you want to learn, but we're also going to jam.
Okay.
And I think this was very valuable.
Oh yeah.
And so he would just like play some very, because I think blues is such a great foundation because it's simple.
Yeah.
And it teaches you feeling, like
right.
change, and when a change is coming,
yeah,
and how to play with somebody, especially early on, because it's simple. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, and phrasing instead of just noodling too.
Yeah. And so that's all we would do is I would come and for the most part, he was like, okay, we're gonna jam, in this key today, and so we'll just go back and forth and improvise, and that's kind of how those lessons I feel were really valuable. And I also, I started writing songs as soon as I learned to play a chord, I
Wow.
started making up my own songs.
Wow.
And, they're nothing impressive, but something that sounded like a version of AC/DC or something I would have heard, just transferring it and kind of coming up with my own kind of song and coming up with some cheesy lyrics. And
did your teacher make the jump like from open chords to power chords really quick with you, or?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the time where he was like, we're going to get out of this book now.
Okay.
Because the book was pretty much, all the folk open chords,
right,
kind of, which are all valuable to know.
Oh yeah.
And all that stuff's valuable to know. But then when I wanted to learn Hot Blooded, that's bars, and then he started showing me bar chords and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So when did you get into like Ramones kind of stuff?
The thing about punk is, so if you're growing up in Longview and you don't have an older brother or somebody that went to college or whatever, punk got to Longview it took a long time for punk to get to Longview. And that's not to say there weren't people that are listening to it, but if you don't have a connection to those kind of people, so for me, I'm the oldest.
So no big brother.
No big brother coming back from college or anything, and showing me television and Dead Boys and Ramones. I had heard of the Ramones, of course. I heard of the Sex Pistols because that kind of, Sex Pistols news made it to Longview, especially when Sid Vicious died, and they were, a story. And so you would hear about that, but I wasn't really familiar with their music. The first time I heard the Ramones was the movie they did, the Rock and Roll High School.
Oh, okay.
And I remember thinking I really liked the music because to me, at the time, it sounded like the 50s music that I loved.
Okay.
It's not a far stretch.
Yeah. Well, and also at that time, youth culture was dividing ever since disco hit. That's because I'm older than you. And I remember walking into a high school dance and all of a sudden everything had changed and it was a disco and I hated it. Right. And I think that's the first time that teenagers disagreed with teenagers. So we went two separate directions. Yeah. And punk was the response to that, I think.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get into punk, but you did. And it was a back to basics, like you say, back to the 50s or whatever, back to the crystallized meaning of the music.
I remember, remember they had the shirts that said "Disco Sucks."
Oh yeah.
And so my mom also didn't care for disco much. My mom had great taste in music.
Yeah, sounds like
still does. But she, so I wanted that shirt, but she thought it was offensive. Okay. So she made me get one that said, "Help stamp out disco in our lifetime."
That's good.
But when you're talking about groups in high school, that I ended up because of the lead of Black Sabbath and what I was listening to, I ended up in the stoner group.
Okay.
Which is there wasn't a punk group.
You're right. Yeah.
Not Longview, not at RA Long. There wasn't. Yeah. It was like new wave and pop, modern, stuff that would have been hits. Yeah. And then there was the heavy metal dudes that were stoners. Yeah. It's kind of what it was. And
punk was kind of ridiculed. I was at Oregon City, which is not that far off from Longview, and we would just make jokes about it, and the hair, the big spikes, and all that kind of thing. That's what we noticed, and then Sex Pistols. Just the name Sex Pistols was something amazing back then. But and I remember one of my classmates saying, "Oh, punk is where all the energy of rock and roll is now," and I thought, that's ridiculous.
But he was right.
He was right. He was absolutely right. Yeah.
The first real girlfriend that I got, who starts to tell you, you should wear this, you should wear that, that looks stupid, or whatever. So she put me in some straight, and this is silly, right? But because at the time everything was bell bottomy.
Oh yeah,
loose, very loose, right? You didn't have tapered pants.
No.
In Longview.
Yeah.
In ninth grade.
Yeah.
No one wore that.
Did you have the long striped bell bottoms?
I may have. Yeah, actually, I got pictures with the checkered ones.
Oh, okay.
Britannias. I had a pair of Britannias that were my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
But she was like, you need to wear some straight leg Levi's and she bought me this purple shirt with the arms cut off. It was very new wavy. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. It's different.
So take me from learning guitar and all that into starting your first band.
One of the first kind of performance things that I used to do was we would schedule a time at Lake Sacagawea, and I didn't really have a band yet, but I played with a couple people that kind of played drums, and but so everybody would show up at like 10 o'clock at night at Lake Sacagawea, and I'd plug my amp in, and I would play Jimi Hendrix version of the Star Spangled Banner.
All right.
And everybody would come for that. I didn't really have a band yet, but
wow.
But there was a couple guys that were into music too, and would have like inherited themselves half of a drum set from an uncle or something, and started playing with them a little bit. I think one of my first bands was called Ampage.
Okay, that's a cool name.
Ampage. But it was just me and my friend Larry. We would just play some AC/DC songs and then a couple originals that I had come up with. And I don't remember there being any kind of vocals. We would just
really
play, yeah.
I remember a 7th grade dance like that, or a high school dance or something, where they played 25 or 6 to 4 and nobody sang. They just did the riff over
Right.
and over, and they played Wipeout and things like that, and no singing, just riffs, and we danced, and that was it. Yeah.
When you're playing guitar and stuff, you start to meet other guitar players of your age in school that are playing, and before you know it, you're like, well, we need to find a bass player, and you kind of start to mingle around in, I guess you'd call it a scene. I don't know if it was really a scene in Longview.
Yeah.
Longview was mostly bar bands, and but there was like hard rock, semi-original bands at the time
in Longview.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we put together something early on with Jerry Davis. We did a pep assembly, and we put a band together for that. We talked to school and they let us do a pep assembly.
All right.
And so we played like Judas Priest version of Diamonds and Rust and Green Manalishi, a couple Judas Priest songs. I opened it with the Star Spangled Banner, which the principal thought I was going to play a straight version of it. He was not real happy that it was Jimi Hendrix's version of it.
I'm impressed that he took the chance on letting you do this, though. That's
well, it was one of those things where the shop teacher, he wanted to do it. He played drums. And he went to the superintendent and said, hey, I just talked, and he was in a biker gang. This guy was the shop teacher. He was cool. He went to the superintendent of the school and said, I just talked to the principal. I got the clearance to do this, put this rock and roll band together with the students and play at a pep assembly. I just wanted to make sure it's okay with you. He said, oh, well, the principal okayed it. I okayed it. And then he went to the principal and said, I just talked to the superintendent.
Okay.
And he got it pushed through.
That's good.
And so, they videotaped it, but nothing exists of it. But it was a lot of fun. And so from that, we kind of put a band together.
Okay. And
kind of had a revolving group of guys that I would play with. But that core of guys from that band, and we would do 80% covers, and then I had like 3 or 4 originals that we'd do.
Okay.
And that was kind of that, and then it started to be 50-50 originals covers, 80-20 or more originals than covers.
Was the Jimmys your first real band that was out there doing stuff and gigging regularly and all that?
No. So while I was in Longview, it was mostly like heavy metal bands, and that's kind of what I was into. And then, so in 1985, I moved to Portland, and nothing really came much of that. We played around a bit and had some fun. But I moved to Portland in 1985, and I went around and put up flyers with, looking to get in a band and stuff that I was into, which at the time would have been mostly like that grassroots underground metal that was starting up in that time frame. We're talking about Slayer, Venom, Sodom, black metal, stuff like that. Thrash metal. I was really into that. I mean, I still love that stuff. But I put up flyers
looking for band members, right?
Looking to start a band.
Okay.
And I got got a couple responses, but one guy who I went and picked up one day was he was in kind of a thrash punk type of band. He had a drummer and he knew a bass player and he had lyrics. Okay. And I had a bunch of riffs and songs and stuff that was kind of in that ballpark of thrash punk, whatever you want to call it, fast stuff. Definitely a metal influence, definitely a underground metal influence, a black metal influence, a Black Sabbath influence that never leaves me.
This is when you were a young adult?
Yeah, I would have been 21.
Okay. And did you go to college any?
I went to college just before I moved. I went to LCC for like a term.
So you moved to Portland to work and find a scene, and
there was no jobs in Longview in 1983. Okay. 84. Yeah. I remember trying to get anything. There wasn't any openings for a paper route in Longview in 1984. Yeah. So my stepdad at the time said, I can get you a job in Portland because he worked in Portland. And so I got a job at a produce warehouse. Okay. I moved here, got a little apartment, $200 a month, one bedroom, $200 a month. Yeah, yeah. And I've always loved Portland. Anytime we come when we were kids, I loved coming here. Yeah. And so I thought, I'll move to Portland and get a job, and maybe I can find a band to be in there. Yeah. And that's kind of what happened. And I started playing with that one guy that responded. We kind of hit it off, and our first band was called Protest.
That's a great name. That's a really good name.
I'm surprised it hasn't been used more.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
especially for a punk band. Yeah, but we recorded demos were big at the time. Yeah, on cassette. Yeah, you recorded demo cassette, and there was a big trading network, and our singer was really into that. And he did a lot to connect us, and he wrote people all the time. We were just starting to become drug addicts and alcoholics, and he was totally like the straight edge guy. So he was like focused. He worked hard. He knew what to do, and I wrote songs and got drunk, Yeah. But it was, it was all still fun then. But Protest probably only lasted a couple years. Yeah. And
that was thinking of 1984 and music in Portland, which I was semi in touch with. You would have really been on the fringes doing that style of music, because and where would you play? Were there venues, or was it just parties and stuff?
We didn't. I mean, you had Satyricon, which you had obviously Poison Idea and a hardcore punk scene that was pretty vibrant.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, I forgot about Poison Idea and all those. So Satyricon was the place. Yeah. Was there X-Ray Cafe in '84?
The Satyricon, and we played at a couple of shows that were just put together in a school gymnasium or something. Really? We played a show out in Carver. Carver out by Oregon City. At a school out there. Okay. Or out by Estacada, on their way to Estacada. Carver kind of. Yeah. There's a school out there. And we did a big punk show out there.
Really?
And that was kind of weird.
Who was putting things together back then that would be that big?
Our singer at the time would have been, he was the guy that, like I said, kind of organized all that. But that existed in that Portland scene, I guess. It would have been same bands that would have played with Poison Idea or at Satyricon.
Napalm Beach is
which came a little bit later than that, but it was cool. And that was, we were kind of short lived. We didn't play. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of places. Yeah, I don't think X-Ray was up yet, but we didn't play there.
Okay. So how that turned into Jimmy's?
So that actually turned into Dread, which was even more of a hardcore thing.
Okay, that's another great name. You got away with band names.
and that we recorded in a real studio. That was the first time I recorded something in a real studio, and this would have been like '87. That was a pretty focused, same singer from Protest, and my brother Tim played drums. Okay. For the first time in a real band with me. Mm-hmm. And we actually, and Scott Arledge from Longview played bass. And so that's where we practiced. And we were a pretty damn good band for a couple of years. We made a real good demo tape that got picked as Demo of the Month by MRR.
Wow.
We played around a little bit. The problems of the drinking and the drugging was really weighing on the singer.
Oh, okay.
Who was just had his shit together more than we did.
Uh-huh.
And so there were some clashes there. You'd practice for a show, and then me and the bass player would get completely smashed and ruin it.
Okay.
And he would be frustrated. But we did some Longview shows and some Portland shows, and then just kind of blew up.
Yeah.
And then from that came the Jimmies. So Tim, and then my brother Chris was in another band at the time that was similar to Dread and that speed kind of hardcore thing called MIS. And when that band also kind of dissolved, I guess, Eric and Chris came in, singer, guitar player. We already had Scott and Tim on drums and a singer.
Yeah.
He went, his was probably pretty glad to get rid of us. And Chris sang. And so that was the Jimmies.
So you had two brothers in Jimmy's?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I knew you had one, and I never knew which one it was.
Tim, drummer, and Chris, singer. Yeah. Okay. And so at the time, even though both our bands and what we were doing was kind of that, I guess what you kind of call crossover, which was kind of hardcore punk with metal, we were listening to a lot of real melodic stuff. Like we'd all get together and get drunk and listen to the Misfits and the Ramones and Stiff Little Fingers. And I think we wanted to do something that was more poppy.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I remember a reviewer comparing you to the Replacements, which is one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, that's an extreme compliment. I don't know if we were ever that good, but
yeah, and I that's not a comparison I would make, but I think the energy and the aesthetic was the same. And also when you tell stories about things being hamstrung by excesses, that's what the Replacements were known for too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that was before I knew you personally at all. That I read about you and hear little bits here and there, and I saw you play at least one time before I knew you, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to hand it to you, and I see it through the decades too, that you were a beloved band in the scene. People, and just hearing your story, I think you're a people person in a way. Like you're a quiet guy, but you draw people to you, and good things come out of that, and that's quite a talent to be able to do that.
I mean, I'm grateful for everybody in Longview that supported us. There's a lot of times in music where you can feel sorry for yourself. This didn't happen. No one came to that show. They got that show. We should have got that show. There's all kinds of petty, immature things that go on. But really, if you can, be real about it, you just have to be grateful for people coming to your show, no matter how many they are.
Yeah.
And just be thankful that 5 people came, and not bitch to those 5 people that 10 more people didn't come.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and also there's just something like a mystique about a show with only 5 people, and then those 5 people can tell that story, and it becomes a legend or something like that. But it was an exciting time. And is this the early 90s we're talking about now? Yeah.
I mean, technically, I think the Jimmy started in 89.
Yeah.
That's kind of when we first formed. Then eventually we recorded a demo. But Longview embraced us right out of the gate. It feels like,
hometown, yeah.
And remember, there was kind of a scene going on already from the bands that I was talking about. And Longview, punk had made it to Longview. Remember I said it takes a while?
Right, yeah.
Where it hit other places in 1974, it got to Longview about 1986.
Yeah.
But they started doing, do-it-yourself shows, and you had lots of young people starting bands, and actually Longview had a fairly thriving scene, which is a weird thing to have, like the scene of punks, but, in a small town, all the jocks are like, well, what's going on over there? Why are we part of that? We want to go do that.
Yeah.
And there were some clashes, but so there was already kind of a scene going when the Jimmy started playing.
Yeah.
And Longview just always embraced us, and I'm grateful for that. And, it was cool. I mean, to have people showing up at our shows right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And supporting us really all the way through.
Yeah. And when you mentioned the jocks, it makes me think of my impression of mosh pits through the years. Is there was a time where it was very like universal, everybody was accepted and everybody looked out for each other and we were all having a fun time and like that. And then every now and then you get a big guy who's got muscles and he wants to show off and stuff and becomes kind of a jerk, and then it's not so much fun anymore. And they miss the point of it, and they miss the origin of it. And they have missed the aesthetic expression of it too.
I think I don't know if it was ever not violent, right? There's a violent nature to it always.
Yeah.
But when I think it seems that when that crossover metal influence came in, which I was part of, but I think more of a violent element came in. At least that's my take on it.
Yeah, well, and you're right, there's always that violent element, but there's a difference between we are all angry and we're here to express that, or I'm bigger than you and I'm going to knock you out of this circle. It's a different way of approaching it.
It's not as fun.
Right, exactly.
It's not as fun. I mean, I remember going from being able to bump around and bang around and pay attention to the band too.
Yeah.
To being on guard all the time that you're going to get your teeth knocked out.
Right.
That's not fun.
No.
I mean, I'm mostly still here for the music.
Yeah.
That's really why I'm here.
Yeah.
So now I can't even watch the band because I have to worry about some, lunkhead putting his fist through the back of my head or elbowing me in the face or kicking me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I remember about that time is the excitement that anybody could get famous at any time, and we didn't know who it was going to be. And the example I always pull up was I went to see Heat Miser one time, and Elliott Smith was this little skinny guy up on stage with the knit cap on and all that, and they were fine, and they were famous in Portland, and they were a fun band to go see. But then it just seemed like the blink of an eye, and Elliott Smith was on the Grammy Awards holding hands with Beyonce on stage, and you didn't know how it happened. It was like lightning hits here, and even Nirvana was part of that. Like I remember seeing a sign for Nirvana and somebody else on the Paramount Theater sign maybe in downtown Portland, and I thought, I'll go see them some other time. And that summer, they became huge, and all of a sudden, they weren't as accessible as they used to be. And you didn't know who it was going to be. And the fun part about having a band is you'd think, maybe it'll be me next. Where's lightning going to hit?
Yeah.
And I think Jimmy's were right on that. You were ready for a bigger stage if the lightning had struck at the right time.
Yeah, it felt like it a couple times. And, you can dissect it all you want, why we never achieved more, I guess. I don't know. But it felt like, and that's what a lot of bands go through, I think, and that's what eventually can break you down is you feel like you're on the precipice so many times, and then it just doesn't happen.
Okay.
And then you climb and you're on, you start to you feel like your platform's rising, and then nothing really happens, and I think that happened to us a number of times. And then at some point you kind of hit a crest and it doesn't happen, and then it just kind of, then it feels over.
Yeah.
Like your season's over.
Yeah. Well, and what I think you have and what it takes is your passion for your aesthetic, for your artistic voice. And you've certainly carried on more than anybody else on the Portland scene that I know of. You've carried on in this underground sort of way and gone through metamorphosis. Sometimes you go back and you pick up some of what you used to do and all that. But whatever you've done, I see that passion there, that you're going to do this. If there's the whole world listening, you're going to do this. If there's 5 people in a backyard listening, you're going to do this.
I like the way you put it better than the way I put it in my head.
Okay.
In my head, I look at it as part of it's just dysfunctional, a drive to be accepted, to be, just to be loved by everybody. I mean, I sometimes think that's where that drive comes for attention, to be validated, just for someone to tell me I'm good. I mean, we don't want to break this into a psychotherapy session.
Yeah.
But that's how I think about it sometimes. And I feel like some days I just want it all to go away, like the need. And I think like I'm getting there a little bit, like to be able to just try to enjoy what you're doing. You'd think I'd have learned this by now, that the money and the fame, you know.
Yeah. I think at some point we all give up on money.
I think gave up on that a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's why I have a job.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the way you're describing it, it sounds shallow on the surface, but I think if you're a songwriter, you write some lyrics that mean something to you, that come out of some experience, and then the next step is you want that to connect to somebody else.
But that's where the problems start. Like you create that wonderful song in your room, you enjoyed making it. It feels like you accomplished something. There's like maybe a meditative kind of joy that comes from that. So then you're like, I want to share this with people, and to what I was saying before, there's also part of me that says I can use this to validate myself. If I put this out there into the world and people tell me it's good, then I will be able to go home and look in the mirror and say, you're good.
Okay.
And I don't know how healthy that is.
Yeah. But,
you know,
it would be nice if you knew you're good even without that. That's all we're missing.
I'm striving for that.
Yeah.
But once, you know, so I just finished a recording an acoustic album. It's done. I'm waiting for the records to show up. The fun is over in my mind.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. I like write a song, record it once, all done. And I mean, I've done what I need with that, on to the next thing. Yeah.
And then I have to deal with, how do I get this out there to the world?
Yeah.
And I start that whole process of, where do I play? Who do I play with? How do I make sure there's people there? How do I promote? How do I get reviews? How, you know?
Yeah.
And it becomes really exhausting to me.
And a lot of rejection. That's what's exhausting.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, I've been there time and time again. And part of you wants to just like realize it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Like reviews don't matter that much.
Yeah.
A year from now, it's all going to be no big deal. If 15 people come to the show, I'll be grateful for the 15 that came, and life moves on, and it ain't no big deal. But leading up to it, I'm full of insecurities about nobody coming, insecurities about playing shitty, forgetting my lyrics. I want everybody, all the bands that I play with, or the musicians I play with, all the people that come to the show, the people that own the venue, the bartender, I want everybody to do well. And I feel responsible to all of them, which is silly.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying. I felt the same things. But somehow, from my perspective, you have a lot of those skills even. And maybe because you work so hard at it, and working hard at it means 80% of it is failure, and that 20% is working. And I can't even get to that 20%, so that's why I'm impressed by you. So,
well, I appreciate that. I'll try to take some of that to heart.
Yeah. Let's shift, and I want you to give me a tour of what you got going on here, and take me around on things.
Yeah.
Tell me how you got into recording, and kind of take me to what you're doing now with this space.
Yeah, so I actually used to record people out of my home. Digitally. I had a 8-track digital recorder, and I did that because it's fun. I like recording people, so I invite people over to record. Then I got the record lathe, and so I started cutting my own records at home. Very similar to what Fred Cole did, Dead Moon, a very similar record lathe. So I cut some records for Dead Moon Night a couple years ago.
What was that, like a tribute night? A bunch of bands?
That's an actual holiday here in Portland.
Oh, okay.
Technically,
That's cool.
October 8th or October 5th, I believe it is, dedicated as Dead Moon Night.
Okay.
In dedication to Dead Moon.
And we had to explain, Dead Moon was a long-time Portland band. And
yeah, Dead Moon is like part of the absolute fabric of rock and roll in this town. They built a reputation of 60s garage type of sound,
right?
But also a punk ethic. And ethic is a big thing with the history of Dead Moon. I think there's a warm feeling with everybody in Portland about that band and the way they treated people. and the way they went about their business.
They were mentors to a lot of people, I'd say.
Yeah, and you could trace the beginnings of Fred and Tootie, you know, into the late 60s, into the 70s, and you know, the music that he did. But so I got a record lathe very, very similar, a Presto record lathe, started cutting my own records. And Tootie invited me to the house when I did that Dead Moon Night, a run for Dead Moon Night. And when I was there, she asked me if I wanted this machine, which is a Scully mono tape deck. And of course, I would be fooled to say no. And so it was out in kind of I guess, Fred's old storage garage where he had old cars. And I didn't know Fred, not claiming to know Fred well, but you could tell that he collected lots of stuff. And so you got old cars, but this is out there. And so this is like in February, it's ice cold out there. This is covered in grime and dust, and Tootie doesn't even know if it works, but I said, yes, I'll take it. And I took it home, completely cleaned it, did everything I could physically to it. I don't know how to wire these things. Turned it on and it worked. I mean, which is shows you how they built things. So this is, I'm assuming this is you know, don't quote me on this. It's a late 70s model probably, but it fired up and worked. There was a couple of issues with it. And so I found a guy that maintains tape decks and took it and just gave it to him for a couple of weeks, let him bring it right back up to specs. And so I moved into actually the basement of the Chapel Theater with just this deck and one mic preamp and one microphone, and just started inviting people over there in the basement to record. And being kind of the manic compulsive person I am, this started a fire about recording and analog recording.
I thought you were about to say a literal fire. I thought, oh my gosh.
No. It's never done it. It's never. Actually, I'll tell you what. For the first month that this thing worked, every time you would start it up and it would warm up, you would smell nicotine. The room would be filled with nicotine smell. It doesn't do that anymore, but it did for a couple months. And so I just started to learn how to use compression and a preamp with one microphone and a tape deck. And so at some point, the Chapel Theater expanded into this, where we're having this conversation today. And I was offered the opportunity to actually move into this room where I'm at now. And so, of course, it started here. And this I use, it's a great sounding full track mono tape deck. The frequency on this is great. It's very warm, very big. One microphone, it's amazing what you can get. So I invite people in to do what I call the Dead Mono sessions. And I thought that was brilliant, taking Dead Moon and just flipping the letters to make it Dead Mono. And so we have Dead Mono sessions, and then I take the recordings and cut on a Presto record lathe, very similar to what Fred would have used. And you know, part of the drive, the ethic is that Fred would think this was cool.
Right.
If I was, his old mono tape deck was working and recording music that was leading to someone cutting records on a lathe just like his. So
yeah, that is incredible. Let's check out the chapel now and
Yep.
just see where it all started.
Yep. So this is the Chapel Theater. We are just about 30 feet from my studio that we were just at. This is all under the umbrella, really, of the Chapel Theater. This was an old church. It's turned into a performance space. Ilya and Corinne are a couple that own this, and they want arts in the community. They have worked very hard to make this a wonderful space for plays, dance, music, everything. And I love being part of it, and I love being here. And so I've done a few shows here. It's a great place to do shows. It's just a great community space. But where I started with the recording with the mono tape deck was down here. I I have a very small home, so I didn't have really any place to put that tape deck in my house. And so I floated the idea out if I could possibly rent a little space down here. And so this is kind of the green room where when they have plays and stuff, this is where people change and whatnot. And so at some point, that mono tape deck sat right here. And I shared this room and I rented it by the hour. So I started just recording people right in this room. And then sometimes I would run a microphone into this space. And this room is amazing. As if you come inside, it's got great natural room acoustics. So I started recording some people in here and just put them here, put a mic out here, and it sounded great.
Are they teaching ballet? Is that the bar?
Yes, there's all kinds of, they do tap dance, ballet, all kinds of dance classes happen over here.
Okay, yeah. The acoustics are really something.
Yeah, I mean, if you record in here, you're married to this room sound, but it is a cool room sound.
Yeah.
But this is where I started recording and kind of started to learn, and I'm still learning to do that. But then eventually they expanded and bought that building next door and turned that also into a community space over there as well, where there's a bigger room that we didn't see, and then the small room that my studio's in. And yeah, so I like to keep my inspiration simple. When I let my dog out in the backyard to take a leak, I go out with him in the middle of the night, and I always stretch up high into the sky with my arms and take a big deep breath before I go back into bed. And that spawned a song, which I really haven't played much until today when I was sitting around with this guitar, but this is the guitar that my mom had that I first started learning on. So we'll try this one and see how it goes. It's Dark and Starry Sky. I go outside, oh, in the middle of the night, reach up high, oh, the dark and starry sky. So nice, oh, I sit down for a while, spend some time, whoa, in my clean and fitting skin, cross my legs and I fold my hands. I'm just sitting, relaxing, daydreaming. Then I'm sitting, relaxing, daydreaming. I'm just sitting, relaxing, daydreaming. Then I'm sitting, relaxing, daydreaming. Go outside in the middle of the night, reach up high in the dark and starry sky. Then I breathe in deep in the summer night. I go inside that was flawed, but
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Barry's a great guy with he's a deep thinker, I think, too, and it's fun to sit down and talk with him. I could have talked all day. Since I've been gone, I hope you've all been good to each other, like I always ask you to be, and you've all been giving each other the benefit of the doubt and being patient with each other. Just because I don't make videos for a while, you don't get any excuse to be mean, so nobody be mean out there, please. I am going to turn off my camera right now in this video, and then I'm going to start it again and introduce a song that I recorded at Barry's studio. So until then, goodbye. See you later.